So we are here and we are receiving Sharad Vivek Sagar, CEO of Dexterity Global, to Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Cultural Center as he steps into the place which is sanctified by the presence of Swami Viveknada, and he delivered his last public lecture here, and it is so apt to call Sharad Vivek Sagar over here because his name has got Vivek in it. Take your seats. Swami Vivekananda said, "Feel, my children, feel. Feel for the poor, the ignorant, the downtrodden. Feel till the heart stops and the brain reels and you think you will go mad. Then pour the soul out at the feet of the Lord. Then will come power and indomitable energy." So aptly, Mr. Sharad Vivek Sagar fulfills the dream of Swami Vivekananda. Let me tell you, we feel honored to welcome him here where Swami Vivekananda had delivered the last public lecture of his life, and ever since 1993, this institute had been touching lives of 50,000 people, giving them skills, and so similar to Dexterity Global, which also reaches out to people of remote places, and it has touched the life of 1.2 million. I also would like to remind all of us that we are in a place which gives services to the youth of this region in computer training, in language and communication skills, drawing and painting, and it also gives computer training to the rural folk, reaching out to them in a van, taking laptops and resource person and giving them training on personality development as well as computer training. We also can remember that it is from this place we are giving out services like Youth Forum, Sanskriti, teaching young children about Indian values and culture. I welcome Mr. Sharad Vivek Sagar on behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Cultural Center. Before all the formalities, let me read out the biography of his. Sharad Sagar, the founder and CEO of Dexterity Global, is an Indian youth icon, a globally renowned entrepreneur, and a 21st century leader whose words and work in the field of education and public service are inspiring a generation. President Barack Obama invited him to the White House. Forbes listed him in the global Forbes 30 under 30 list. The Rockefeller Foundation inducted him in the list of 100 next century innovators. The Nobel Peace Center invited him to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, and the Queen of England included him in the Queen's Young Leaders. May I have an applause on that? Born in a small village of India, Sharad went to school for the first time at the age of 12. By the time Sharad graduated high school, he had won major quiz and debate competitions, top ranked in Olympiads, and represented India at major intergovernmental and UN platforms in Japan, South Korea, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India, and founded his own startup Dexterity Global to extend the same opportunities to future young leaders. To better understand the ideas and challenges of a 21st century leadership, Sharad received a full scholarship worth rupees 4 crores to pursue a bachelor's degree in the United States of America. Sharad graduated with a BA in International Relations from the Tufts University, home to one of the world's first and foremost programs in foreign policy and international relations. In college, Sharad delivered guest lectures while still a student, managed the varsity ice hockey team as its first non-American team manager, and ran his internationally awarded startup Dexterity Global from his dorm room. I think this demands another applause. Sharad was the first-year student in college history to win the 1 Million Entrepreneur Challenge. He was inducted in the Rockefeller list of 100 next century innovators and Forbes 30 under 30 list while still in college, and was one of the 3 graduating seniors in the United States to receive the Samuel Huntington Public Service Award. But that's not all. Something that makes him special is this. In May 2016, Sharad became the first Indian in 160 years of university history to deliver the graduation address at Tufts University. And later that month, he turned down a master's degree from the Harvard University to return to India to continue working with children and youth. Turning down Harvard degree. Sharad is quoted globally by influential leaders, corporations and startups, universities and governments, newspapers and media houses, and reaches over 10 million people annually. Powering his vision of creating a 21st century leadership to fight 21st century challenges, Sharad has spoken globally and been invited to some of the world's most prestigious and influential institutions, including the United Nations, the World Bank, the White House, Harvard, IITs, and IIMs. His connection to Ramakrishna mission is very intimate. Not only that his middle name Vivek comes from Swami Viveknada, but also he had been specially blessed by Swami Gautamananji Maharaj and many other Swamis of the order, which he cherishes, as is evident from the videos that we see over YouTube. I would request Brahmachari Amala Chaitanya Maharaj to escort Swami Divya Sarupananji Maharaj and Sharad Vivek Sagar on stage to felicitate him. And yes, your hands shouldn't stop. Take the entire thing. Without much ado, we shall start the session with Sharad Vivek Sagar. The stage is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Is this the highest energy that Shillong has to offer? Good morning, everyone. Remember, we are all sitting in a hall where not so long ago, just a century ago, the shining beacon of Indian thought and Indian leadership in the world, stood and spoke. So there should be high energy in this hall where Swami Vivekananda spoke on April 27, 1901. So do we have that energy here in Shillong? Is it actually a good morning? All right, we'll do it one last time because I've never done it in my career, waking people up with a good morning, but for some reason I want you all woken up because that is exactly what Swami Vivekananda did all his life and everything that continues after it. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Very nice. So my name is Sharad Vivek Sagar, and my standing here today is life coming full circle for me. And I want to let you know why. Some 4 or 5 decades ago, my father sat at the Ramakrishna Mission Library in Patna, where he used to visit often and he would read. And he decided that one day he would either go on to be a monk or if he ever enters material world, he would name his children after Swami Vivekananda. And then we happened. So he named us after the great patriot monk himself. Sagar in my name comes from Ishwar Chand Vidya Sagar, who had a preliminary role to play in Swamiji's education. Vivek in my name comes from Swami Viveknada, and Sharad because I was born in the winter season. So you see, I never had the opportunity to choose whether I would be associated with the Ramakrishna mission, whether I would walk the path shown by Swami Vivekananda or not. It was decided much before I got here. So that is where my name comes from. But not just that, there is a small story that I want to share with you standing here in Shillong today, because I am actually very emotional, and internally I feel humbled that I'm standing at the same place where Swami Vivekananda stood all those years ago to deliver the last public lecture that he did. When I was 5 years old, I was living in a place called Chhapra. Chhapra is a small place in the state of Bihar. And there was a private ashram. It was not yet a Ramakrishna Mission ashram then. It was a private ashram. It was named the Adbhutananda Ashram. A Ramakrishna Mission monk had come to speak there, and his name was Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj. Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj was speaking, and a book had been distributed to everyone who was in attendance. I was 5 years old, so I was not given a book. Everyone else, after the lecture was over, went to Swamiji, and they were all taking his autograph in the book that had been given to them. I was a 5-year-old kid. I ran and I took out the center page from a notebook. I folded it nicely and I went to Swamiji and I said, Swamiji, I need your autograph and I need your Ashirwad. Swamiji signed it for me, and that was it. Some 17 years later, at the age of 22, I was invited to the great state of Gujarat on 12th of January, that is National Youth Day, to be celebrated as one of the 12 youth icons of India. When my office received the invitation, they saw who the chief guest is going to be, who is going to felicitate these youth icons. And it turns out the person who was going to felicitate these youth icons was Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj. 17 years later, everything had come to the same place. I went before the award ceremony, I touched his feet and I said, and Swamiji was asking everyone, it included wonderful young men and women of this country, including Padma Shri Arunima Sinha, who is the first female amputee to climb Mount Everest, and other wonderful people. Swamiji had met some before and he was meeting some for the first time. When I touched his feet, he asked me, are we meeting for the first time? I said, no Swamiji, we are meeting for the second time. As great memory as Ramakrishna Mission monks have, he said, but I do not recall meeting you before. I said, Swamiji, I was a 5-year-old child. You had come to Chhapra. You had autographed everybody's book, but I didn't get a book because I was 5 years old. So I took your autograph in a piece of paper. I knew that you might not be able to recall or recognize, so I have brought it with me. And I showed him the autograph. And Swamiji said, now I cannot even deny this. This is definitely my autograph. It is just that I have never signed an autograph for a small child. It is just incredible that I did it for you. So when I spoke after receiving the award, I told young people there that see big dreams and big dreams come true, because that evening when I went home with that piece of autograph, I told my parents as a 5-year-old child that this autograph, you please keep it in a file. If I ever receive certificates in my life, because I used to think that certificates are the biggest thing. If I ever receive a certificate in my life, you keep all those certificates in the same file. And these files are multiple now, 3-4 files. And in fact, the day when I received the invitation for being honored in Gujarat by Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj as a youth icon, when I told my teammates this, even they giggled. They know that I do not lie, but they thought this is too good to be true. This cannot be true. So I told them that let's check the certificate folder right now. And we checked and checked and checked. The first file and the last page in it had the autograph in it still. So that is the reason why you can plan in advance. That is the first thing. But to add to that, I think the journey just doesn't stop there. It's not just the name. It's not just meeting a Ramakrishna Mission monk at the age of 5. It's not just reconnecting with the mission and working with our wonderful young men and women in all parts of the country. I've also been very, very fortunate that I stayed at the Dilaram Bungalow in Gujarat, where Swamiji stayed before leaving for Chicago. I went to Ghazipur in Uttar Pradesh where Swamiji had come, where he met Pohari Baba. I have been initiated by Vice President Ji Maharaj, Srimad Swami Gautmanand Ji Maharaj. He's my Guru Maharaj. And last year, when Swamiji's 125th anniversary of the Chicago address was being celebrated across the world, I had the great honor of standing up and delivering the memorial address in Hyderabad. But not just that, when the World Parliament of Religions took place, the 125th after Swamiji's speech, Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj was participating at the World Parliament of Religions. It was going to be in Toronto in Canada. I remember that after Swamiji had finished speaking at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, a speech that continues to live even 125 years later, I remember that in May 1894, few months after speaking in Chicago, Swamiji had come to Harvard. And Swamiji had spoken at Seaver Hall in Harvard. So I requested Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj that it would be wonderful if a monk from the Ramakrishna order comes to Seaver Hall at Harvard 125 years later, and right after speaking at the World Parliament of Religion, speaks at Harvard University as well. So we requested Harvard to open the same hall, and they opened it, and Swami Nikleshwaranandji Maharaj spoke there. And when he finished speaking and he walked out, it snowed in Boston, the first snow of Massachusetts that season. But it is only wonderful that the monk who autographed at the age of 5 an Ashirwad for me, who I re-met at the age of 22, 17 years later to receive an award as a youth icon of India, who I got Harvard Seaver Hall opened for last November when I was invited by the government of Meghalaya for a program here. He wrote an email to this ashram in Shillong and said that Sharad Sagar should interact with wonderful young people here, and guess which hall has been opened? The hall where Swamiji delivered his last public address. All of this put together, it is life coming full circle. And you cannot plan these things. You just cannot. So that is the reason why I think if your values are in the right place, if your conviction is deep, if you know what you want to do, if you know how to put people first, you don't have to worry for yourself. Things take care of themselves. But this is largely the side of story which is more like poetry. Let us get into the story a little bit. I know there are young people in this hall who wonder who I am, where I come from, what I do. For you, I have a little bit of my introduction. I was born in a small village of Bihar, a place by the name of Ziradeh. My connection with my village is that I was born there. Your connection with Ziradeh is that the first president of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, was born in Ziradeh. I was born some 5 decades after our independence in the same village. But our schools and hospitals had yet not reached this small part of India. The idea of development was yet to reach this small village of Bihar. And my parents were concerned that this child who we have named after such great Indians, how will he be educated in these places where there are no good schools or libraries? So my parents took a bold decision. They decided that they would educate us at home, me and my 2 siblings. My education happened in 3 ways. The first way was books and copies would be bought and they would be brought home, and we studied at home English, math and science, reading, writing and arithmetic, whatever comprises of education. The second way was every single day it was mandatory for us to read newspapers, and newspapers in the parts of the country where I lived, the small towns and villages of Bihar, used to reach 1 day late. And the third way was that the small rented houses where we lived, on every single wall of the house, there was a quotation of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, Swami Viveknanda, President Kalam, and other great men and women of our times and those who walked the face of the planet before us. It was pasted in English and Hindi. Every morning when we woke up, it was mandatory that we went around the house reading these quotations. These were 3 ways in which my education took place. The first 12 years of my life, the second way of my education, reading newspapers, I did that religiously. When I used to read these newspapers, I would hear stories about kids from Hyderabad and Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore who would win at major competitions, secure full scholarships, who would represent India across the world. And I used to wonder if I can do the same, but I just could not because I was not affiliated to any educational institution. I was not enrolled in a school. At the age of 12, when my elder siblings had to write their board exams, standard 10th exams, it was decided we would move to the capital city of Bihar, the city of Patna, with our mother, and my father would continue working from the rural areas where he was posted as a State Bank employee. So in 2002, I came to Patna for the first time and started going to school 2002, 2003. And once I entered school, I knew the only thing that was missing was complete. Now I was affiliated to an educational institution, and now I could participate in all these competitions that I had read about. Whenever I would read about these children in newspapers, there was one thing I was doing continuously while being homeschooled. I would write down the name of the competition, the name of the scholarship, the name of the universities that these children were going to, and I would write down the month in which these competitions happen, who can participate, and how. When I came to school, by now this diary was full of a diary of opportunities, and I started participating in every single competition there was, local, national, and international. By the time I was graduating high school, I had the great honor of representing India in over 6 different countries and participated and won in over 200 different competitions, academic and co-curricular. Now this is something that the local media love to celebrate. People in my city were very proud of. And this was something that I could have left with, thinking that I am doing all these things because I'm the smartest kid ever. But by God's grace, I stopped and asked myself, why was I doing these things when my friends who were as hardworking, who had as big dreams, whose parents wanted them to do as great, why were they not doing the same things? Why were they not competing at the same level or securing the same kind of scholarships or winning the same kind of competitions? And the answer, fortunately, was clear to me. The answer was that these children did not have an upbringing like mine. They did not grow up reading newspapers and finding out that these opportunities even exist. And this is the most unfortunate part. No matter how smart you are, no matter how hardworking you are, if you do not know that an opportunity exists, you don't get that opportunity. As a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I represented India at United Nations platforms. I spoke at global town halls. I was a part of youth committees that drafted policies and youth declarations. I was a part of something called the NASA Kids Club. Things that most kids in the country, more than 99.9%, you can say it without even the fear of exaggeration, things that other children did not even know about. So while still in standard 10th, I founded something called Dexterity Global with a very simple idea. That if there is an opportunity in any field that holistically comprises as education, our children should be the first one to know about these opportunities. But there was something else why we founded Dexterity. At all these global platforms that I would go to, where we would discuss stories of development, challenges of poverty, the problems of illiteracy or power cut or clean water supply, the children who I saw putting their views forward at these platforms, they all came from international schools and world schools. They came from those schools that charge sometimes fees that is 10 times the average salary of a common Indian, that are found on the outskirts of mega cities of this country in Bombay and Bangalore and Hyderabad. So these young people who were at these platforms, they came from backgrounds where they of course had more exposure in terms of opportunities, but they had still not seen the India that lives and thrives, an India that struggles and dreams. And it was at these platforms that I thought that if our kids who face these problems firsthand, a child who has seen what a power cut means, a child who knows what clean drinking water means, a child who knows what disconnected means, if these children come to these platforms and put their views forward, put their ideas and solutions forward, we'll probably be unlocking the potential of a generation that Swami Viveknada had imagined would solve the problems of our times. It was with this vision that in 2008 we founded Dexterity. Dexterity's mission statement is very clear. It says, powering the next generation of leaders through educational opportunities. Now, we work with children from all across the country, from all sorts of socio-economic backgrounds. Some children who are still near untouchable in their own communities, to those who barely get enough to eat, sleep, or drink. And across these socio-economic backgrounds, we meet all kinds of children across the country and their parents. When they hear our mission statement that Dexterity Global is on a mission to power the next generation of leaders through educational opportunities, they ask me a question. They say that you connect these kids with opportunities, that is a very good thing. That these children have received more than 40 crores in scholarships in last 2 years alone, that is a very good thing. That you are giving these children power through education, that is a very good thing. Why do you talk about leadership? We don't want our kids to become leaders. And I understand their problem. In our country, in our public maidans and auditoriums and playgrounds, when I stand up and ask our kids, how many of you want to become netas while speaking in Hindi? Not a single hand goes up. A couple of kids who raise their hands, other people start laughing at them. The same question when I ask this question in English, whether it is at our IITs or IIMs or some of the most prestigious institutions, when I ask how many of you want to become leaders, a few more hands go up, but still not everybody raises their hands. Now remember, in a country that is 65% young, in a state where I'm speaking, which is probably one of the youngest states in the country, if our young generation doesn't want to become leaders, it is a problem. Now, I understand why these parents tell me that we don't want our kids to become leaders. I understand why our young people with big dreams say that we do not want to get involved in leadership. Because it is unfortunate that in our country, for too long, leadership has been synonymous to political leadership. And political leadership has been synonymous to bad leadership. We've forgotten to tell our children that leadership lies in every single field. We've forgotten to give our children the example of the greatest generation of leaders in this country. In any country, the greatest generation of leaders is the generation that got it freedom. In this country, we teach our children about Gandhi. But when we tell you about Gandhi, we tell you that Gandhi was a fakir. The only story that you hear from Gandhi's life is that one time he was thrown out of a train in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. We've never told our children that when Gandhi was your age, he had the best possible education in the world at a place called University College in London. That even when he was thrown out of a train in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa, Gandhi was reading a book called War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. We talk about Patel in this country, and we talk about him as the Iron Man. We associate him with iron, but we forget to tell our young people about his oratorial skills, his negotiation skills, his communication skills, and largely the education that he picked when he was your age at Middle Temple College. We talk about Nehru in this country, but we associate him with his topi and with his rose. And we never tell our kids about the education that he received at places as Harrow and Cambridge while he was growing up. What we have done is we have separated a generation of leaders from their education, and we have limited them to symbols. Remember that there is no gap between your education and your leadership. Dexterity is working to bridge that gap between education and leadership, which unfortunately has come in people's thought processes. We send a generation to school so that the next generation can live better. We send a generation to college so that a new generation of doctors and engineers and professionals and bureaucrats and soldiers and scientists come to fore, so that a nation is better protected, a nation is further developed, that the coming generation breathes a better air and lives in a better society. That is the reason why we send a generation to school. It is unfortunate that in our times, our education has been separated from our leadership. And remember, for those of you who live in doubt, if education and leadership can be, the gap between these two can be bridged, that is exactly what we've been doing for the last 10 years. That in New York, when a British Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, walked the red carpet to give the UN Youth Courage Award, the girl who he gave the award to was a young Indian girl who came from a Dexterity platform. That is what leadership looks like. That in Bihar today, the largest social media network of Bihar is not run by a politician or a journalist or an industrialist. It is run by an 18-year-old child who's a proud Dexterity alum. That sitting right here in my room, in this auditorium actually, is my chief of staff, Swaraj, who walked in with me, who received a full scholarship to go to the United States and study. On May 19, 2019, he graduated and he came back and he's serving children and youth in different parts of this country. That is what leadership looks like. Remember, when you feel that you've lost your path and that your education doesn't tell you where you want to move, that leadership looks too challenging, remember two examples. The first one is that right after school closes, in some part of this country today, outside a government school, a standard 10th girl who waits for a standard 8th girl and helps her with 2 math problems, that girl is a leader. Somewhere in Shillong today, a child who doesn't know good Hindi or good English, but knows the local language well enough to represent an old woman to receive a widow pension card from a bureaucrat, that child is a leader. That today in our playgrounds in this country, somebody who helps somebody else play badminton better or play football better, that child is a leader. I had the great honor of meeting with the 44th President of the United States, President Barack Obama, at the White House. And he told us something wonderful. He said that you do not become a leader one day and millions of people know you. You do millions of small acts of leadership, small acts of service, till one day you get to a position where people start seeing you as a leader. So remember, it is your small, meaningful action that changes your home, your family, your classroom, your community, and fortunately, in the longer run, the world. When Martin Luther King walked in the United States of America, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, asking for civil rights, he was just alone. When they sang songs like We Shall Overcome, they did not know that they will be able to get civil rights. In this country, when people marched for freedom, when they protested and when they gathered together, they did not know that they would get freedom in one day. In 1857, when the first uprising happened, they did not even imagine that they would live to see the red fort with a tricolor unfurled on it. But these are the selfless acts of leadership and service that a generation is prepared for. I know sitting in your classrooms and in your homes, watching television at 9 p.m. on your prime time, you might feel disappointed about the kind of state you might live in, about the kind of country that you might live in, about the deaths that happen in our hospitals, or about the many children who we leave outside school. But remember the problems that you see in the country today, your education has to be the solution to those problems. And if you're ever in doubt about leadership, remember, if you're an artist and people tell you you cannot lead through art, it was in this country that a gentleman by the name of Abanindranath Tagore, who by the way inspired by Swami Viveknada and Sister Nivedita, made the first picture of Bharat Mata, that awakened a generation of freedom fighters to fight for a country united and prosperous. If that is not leadership through art, I don't know what is. In the 1960s and 70s, when in this country we debated what would happen if America tries to bully us, China tries to encroach us, Pakistan tries to attack us, it was a child from Rameshwaram who decided to put his education to use and made us a nuclear power. If that is not leadership through science, I don't know what is. If you're somebody who loves sports, in the 1990s, when we opened the economy in this country, it was a cricketer's name that became an adjective. When people did better in their office rooms and classrooms, they used to say, this person has played a Sachin Tendulkar innings today. If that is not leadership through sports, I don't know what is. So remember, no matter who you are, what you want to do, if you want to put your heart and soul to getting something done, you can lead through art and music and science and history and philosophy, whatever you choose. And yes, not just sometimes, most of the times, you can choose more than one thing. Because remember, I've not just been influenced by Swami Vivekananda because he was a patriot monk who inspired a generation and generations unborn in this country. But also, because just like in President Kalam, in a scientist I saw a saint who, when he dreamt of flying in Rameshwaram, his dreams could have crashed in poverty. But President Kalam, that boy Kalam, went from being Kalam to Dr. Kalam, Dr. Kalam to Missile Man Kalam, Missile Man Kalam to President Kalam. And yet, when he entered the president's house, he entered with 2 suitcases, walked out with 2 suitcases, retired and said, I'll continue to be a teacher, and actually chose Shillong to breathe his last. He also delivered his last public address right here at your home. When you think of Kalam, and he has been my childhood hero, in a scientist, I saw a saint. And then you look at Swami Viveknada, somebody President Kalam was inspired by as well. In a saint, in a patriot monk, I saw an intuitive scientist who could engage with Jagdish Chandra Bose on one end and Nikola Tesla on the other. Who was not just that, but as an able advisor. At one time, he was invited by Jamshedji Tata to come in and lead the Tatas, but who in turn inspired the Tatas to build India's leading fortresses in science and research, as the TIFR, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and IISc, the Indian Institute of Sciences, something that is the pride of the nation. But Swami Vivekananda was not just limited to that. His ideas on education continue to influence the East and the West alike. His leadership is an example for all young people and old all across the world, who delivered a speech all unifying, all accepting, and all embracing at a time when some people in the world could not have even imagined those ideas. And it is not surprising that in a world where cities are lost, language is forgotten, sometimes history dies because it fails to transfer from one to the other, a speech lives, and it lives even 125 years later. So remember, no matter what you study, no matter what your dreams are, continue to move forward on that path. And the next time somebody questions your leadership, remember to tell them that leadership is delivering value to someone else with the limited expertise that you have. Whatever you know, whether it is a kind word you can say to somebody who's having a tough day, or an application you can write for somebody who cannot write for himself or herself, to the level of drafting a policy or inventing a new medicine. Whatever it is, whatever your expertise is, if you use that to deliver value, you are a leader. And remember, in a country that at 9 p.m. might get obsessed with a patriotism debate, no matter who you are in this country, where you live, if you do your job with full honesty and full hard work, you are a patriot, and you do not need a certificate from anybody in the country. Because remember, on the coasts in this country, a fisherman who fishes for his family and sells it, if there are a few families that eat better because of that fisherman is a patriot. And if that fisherman takes care of 2 children back at home, that fisherman is a patriot. And that fisherman doesn't need to get a certificate from anybody. Whoever you are, wherever you work in this country, if you're doing your job with full honesty and full hard work, you are a patriot. And remember, in some decade, in that fisherman's family, a Kalam is born. But you do not only become a patriot when a Kalam is born in your family. When proud citizens are raised in your family, who make their communities better because of their existence, who make their societies better because of their education, who change the world around them because of their leadership and their service, that makes this country better. That makes this country work. In all of the greatness of our country, we still see our challenges. We are yet to put all of our kids through school. We are yet to make sure that every person in this country can get quality health care. We are yet to make sure that our policies represent the aspirations of our people. We are yet to ensure that people who need a little bit of hand-holding and a little bit of uplifting can get it. But remember, people in attendance in this room, who comprise the majority of this room, they do not need to be worried about these problems. They need to be excited about these problems. You need to be excited as future healthcare professionals to reach healthcare to every part of this country. You need to be excited as future bureaucrats and professionals and engineers and politicians and artists and painters, whoever you want to be, to do your job as a patriot. Whatever you're doing it with due honesty and hard work. You need to do your job as a true leader. Whatever you have to offer, offering service through that. It is that idea of service that Swamiji wanted our generation to take forward. That idea of seva. It is that idea of seva with which in 1897 an organization was founded that today spans more countries than the span of sunrise at the same time in the world. The Ramakrishna mission across the world takes that idea of Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitaicha to the rest of the world. And it does its job so incredibly. Remember, it was not founded by graduates of the Harvard Business School. It was founded by 12 brother monks who knew that they had to put people first, whose purpose was clear, whose leadership and patriotism needed no certificate but knew no boundaries, who went on to define a generation's idea and generations unborn, their idea of leadership and service. So I know my time is limited today because I have to get going to other states, 2 more in the same day. But here's my final message to you. I've traveled across our country. I've been to more than 21 states and 5 union territories. I outlined this vision to my teammates in the month of December, January, that it is the Northeast where we want to go and unlock the potential of the next generation of leaders. We want them to shine not just as local role models, but as national role models. I outlined a vision that we have for the Northeast, making sure that the mainstream of Indian policy, Indian popular culture, Indian popular arts, Indian popular leaders, or India's most popular acts of service, this should come from the Northeast. And this is the first time, by the way, the 7 states in the Northeast, these are the ones that I'd never come to. It was 2 days back when, on the invitation of your government, I got a chance to set foot in Meghalaya. But this is where I feel the most at home, at a Ramakrishna Mission Center, because traveling across the country, I get to eat at home 12 to 15 times. I get to get lunch prasadam or dinner prasadam at a Ramakrishna Mission Center 180 times in a year. That is the average. So I feel completely at home here. But remember, this might be my first visit to the Northeast, but this is the beginning of our efforts where we look forward to work with you, with the Ramakrishna Mission, with other organizations that know and believe that the greatest generation of patriots and leaders is right here. And with their work, with their help, we can actually change the way our country moves forward. So that is from my end to you. A promise that this is my first visit, but we're going to continue working, and there are going to be multiple visits as we move forward. And a promise from you that I need is that no matter what the challenges outside, go out of this hall and redefine patriotism and redefine leadership in your classrooms, in your office rooms, in your homes, in your playgrounds, wherever you go. Leadership as that small ability of delivering, no matter how small the value is, in somebody else's life. When you handhold and help a sibling study better. When you handhold and enable an old lady to cross the road. When you do the simplest acts of seva, that is leadership. Redefine that leadership in your life. Continue taking that forward. And redefine that patriotism. No matter where you are, what you do whatever you are doing with the greatest level of honesty and hard work. India, of course, has its problems. But these problems should excite us as a generation. These should be challenges that we set out to solve as the next generation of journalists, healthcare professionals, doctors and engineers, chartered accountants, whatever it is. Go out there, use your education to change the world, and whenever in doubt, because remember, there will be difficult days. There will be challenging times. There will be times when you'll need inspiration from outside. Whenever in doubt, pick up a book from the library here. Pick up a book of Swami Viveknada. Pick up the teachings of Ramakrishna Paramhans. And no matter who you are, how you pray, what you think, what you eat, these thoughts will change you from just a person who thinks that you have ordinary capabilities to extraordinary capabilities of serving a generation. So remember to bring your friends to these libraries. Remember to bring your friends to these places, but do not just stay here. Go out of here and change lives. Serve, serve, and serve. Lead, lead, and lead. But most importantly, in your own ability to change the world, believe, believe, and believe. With that message, I leave you today with a promise to come back and bring Northeast to the mainstream of India in every single way. Most importantly, leadership and service. Thank you so much, everybody. This was incredible. I'm told that we can have a short question and answer round. So if time permits, I'm willing to take your questions. We can go in specifics or details or just general questions. Please start.
Robert, you may ask your question.
Robert, where are you? Yes.
Hello, my name is Robert. Right now, I finished my graduation and I'm starting my own business.
Very nice.
So, first of all, hello to everyone. So, my question here is, when you were young, do you envision your life? Do you believe your life will be like this? If yes, does the belief helps? If no, what do you like to suggest for people who thinks that they are lost in this life and doesn't know their future?
Very nice. Good question. One of the first things that you need to take from the Ramakrishna Vivekananda ideology is be a seeker. Don't just become a believer. Believe in your abilities. Believe in what you can do. Swami Viveknanda, for the longest period of time, was a seeker. He kept asking questions. He kept questioning his guru. He kept asking all sorts of questions throughout. So remember, if you see somebody at the age of 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, and you ask the person to believe in something and the person believes immediately, chances are that person hasn't even understood what you were saying. But if that person keeps asking you questions and 5 years later says, okay, now I get it, that person has probably understood it really well. So it is not a bad thing if at this age or stage you're still looking for answers, if you're still trying to figure out what you want to do. It is never a bad thing to have a critical question in mind. What is bad is having a negative answer in mind. If you just have a negative answer, that is a bad thing. But if you have a critical question in mind, that's a good thing. Now to add to that, starting from seeking, to add to that, whether or not I had this clarity when I was young, there's a beautiful example that I do share with my young friends all across the country, that when you want to climb Mount Everest, you don't know exactly the path you will take. You know base camp to base camp what you'll do. You don't know what kind of weather there will be, when there will be a stone rolling down. You don't know what all will happen. But you know that you kind of want to, this is the direction you want to move in based on the fact that you want to climb Mount Everest. Just like that, when you have to go from, say, Shillong to Guwahati, you do not know exactly every single distance that you will cover in a set time or the turns that you will take exactly. There might be a traffic jam. You might take a different road. But you know you want to go to Guwahati from here. You know you want to climb Mount Everest. So very similarly, growing up, I knew kind of what my North Star was, what direction I wanted to move in. There were 2 to 3 things that were very clear in my mind, and that is largely thanks to growing up with the teachings of Swamiji. I wanted to make sure that my education is of use to the society. That was one thing that was very clear. I knew that I wanted to stay committed to public service and nation building. And largely, there was one thing that used to bother me a lot. You know, when you're in high school, they teach you all good values. Be honest, be hardworking, never tell a lie, always be the right people and the right kind of people. And then you go to college and then you graduate and they tell you exactly the opposite things. They start telling you, oh, if you don't become a little practical, and by practical they mean a little crooked in approach or unethical in approach. If you don't become a little practical, you won't be able to do things. Oh, integrity is not the thing. You'll have to do some other things. And that used to bother me a lot when I used to hear those things. So as a child growing up, I knew that I wanted to be a good combination of intelligence and integrity. Because a lot of times I saw people who were honest but did not have the capability, and some people who had the capability but were just not honest. And that was the puzzle I grew up solving, reading newspapers and just watching news and stuff as that. So that was a clarity that I had growing up. I wanted to put my education to use. I wanted to make sure that I work in the field of public service and nation building. And I wanted to be somebody who would be intelligent, but at the same time with an uncompromisable integrity. So these were things I knew. Rest, I knew that as time moves forward, time will offer clarity, and I'll keep moving in a direction where I know this is the direction in which I am moving. The exact roads I'll take, that might differ, and that is something that I believe even today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharad. I think Ms. Darifia has a question and it will go in sync with what Robert has asked.
Oh, are these questions scripted or something? I hope these questions are not scripted. You feel free to ask questions that you like.
Not at all scripted, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, sir. My question to you is, how do you manage to maintain your humility despite your stardom?
That's a wonderful question. I don't think I have stardom, but that's a wonderful question. How do I maintain my humility? I work with a lot of young people who often ask me, sir, how are you so humble? And we always tell them, you should ask a person who is not humble, how can you not be humble? Right? Is there any other way of living your life than being humble and staying grounded and staying who you are? I think it is unfortunate that with so much of consumption of magazines and 24/7 media and social media, the idea has become somewhat that now you do something, now you cannot walk on the ground, you have to like fly 3 feet above it. No, I think the question should not be how can you be so humble? The question to somebody who's not humble should be, how can you not be humble? And it is very clear, and I think that is a problem that we have created in our society with some words like self-made man, self-made woman, and that is an aspiration everybody has. And what that does is, the first thing you do once you get a good education is you separate self from society and you start becoming separate from it. But on the contrary, if we tell our young people or just ask them, how many of you remember when you were 2 years old or 3 years old? 5 years old? 5 years old, when you were 5 years old, you don't remember, no memory of when you were 5 years old? 7 years old? How many of you remember things from last year? Okay, the laughter tells me most of you don't. No, do. So, when you were 2 years old, you must have fallen sick. How many were born supermen and superwomen? That you were not, you never fell sick. But you must have fallen sick, 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old. Do you even remember the families that came and held your parents' hand? Somebody who brought a medicine at 2 a.m., somebody who called a doctor at 3 a.m., somebody who took your family in a vehicle. There is so much that has been given to you, so much that you cannot even count. But the problem that we begin with is, just because we cannot count it, we begin to discount it. And that is where the separation of self from society begins. Remember, no matter who you are, President Kalam or anyone, none of them were self-made men and women. And those who got it, they put it out there. They were what their societies made them. They were what their people around them gave them and helped them become. So we are not separate from the society. We are a part of the society. And when you are a part of the society, where in your most vulnerable moments, weakest moments, people stood by you, people believed in you. If all of these things happened, how can you float like a creature who's come from some other planet and has built the roads on his own, built this building on his own, invented the mic on his own? Everything that you use is either borrowed or made by somebody else, right? I know that there is a generation that says my life, my rules on Facebook in profile pictures. Did you build your road? Did you build your hospitals? Did you build that Facebook? Did you invent that computer? No. Then where is that arrogance coming from? Do you pay your food bills, electricity bill, house rent? No. Where is that coming from? So anybody who's not humble should be asked, how can you not be humble? Right? Anybody who's humble should not be asked, how are you humble? That is the only way you should be living life, right? Somebody who is walking with his hand on his nose, like twisted, turned this way, and holding his nose and walking. You ask that person, how are you walking in such a crooked manner? You don't ask a common man, how are you walking in such a simple manner? Because there is no other manner, right? So that is my answer to you. Next time you see somebody who's not humble, ask that person a question. How can you not be humble? Right? Thank you. Next,
So, may I ask one unscripted?
please.
Okay. So, you're talking about leadership and service. Sometimes it seems so dichotomous. And because the moment we think about leadership, we think about bullying others. So, when people think like that, how do you manage? How do you inspire them? Not to bully, but still be a leader.
Yeah, I think that completely depends on the vocabulary. If there is a child who knows the meaning of go is come, um, I cannot do much about it, but give that child a little better vocabulary. Tell him the meaning of go is go, the meaning of come is come, right? The meaning of see is see, and the meaning of don't see is don't see, right? So the meaning of leadership is leadership, the meaning of bullying is bullying. And those are the two things that are separate. What is a part of leadership is service. So, if somebody doesn't have the vocabulary in the right place, we can help them see the real meaning of leadership, because it is only unfortunate if somebody thinks that the meaning of leadership is bullying. I think the greatest leaders in our country are our mothers. They wake up in the morning, they get the house in order, they send their children to school. Everybody who goes to office, they get them ready. If they also go to office, they go. They deliver so much selflessly. And they are punctual, they deliver value, they are of service, they are forgiving, they lead the path. They have all the qualities of a leader. It is unfortunate when your media at 9 p.m. again in your prime time creates an optic for who a leader is. I ask young people in the country sometimes, who do you think is a leader? Till we actually give them the definition. And they say somebody who's on the television, very popular, people who make good speeches, people whose name, like people who are very good with a microphone, whose names are chanted. So I ask them, is Shakira a leader? Shakira goes around the world, thousands and millions of people follow her, and then people chant Shakira, Shakira when she is performing? No. Or maybe if she is doing other things as well, creating value, but is Honey Singh a leader then? He also goes around, thousands of people follow him, lakhs of people follow him, people chant his name when he performs. Does that make him a leader? Maybe or maybe not, right? So the optics of leadership and the delivery of leadership, both should be checked. The optics can be camouflaged, they can be made to look similar. It is the delivery of it. And the delivery of leadership is whatever expertise you have, you use that to deliver value. Leadership is not about name chanting or people following or just good speeches or just being on television. Largely leadership is unseen, right? When Swami Viveknada was speaking in Chicago, there is a audio recording on YouTube. How many of you have heard it? Swamiji's Chicago address, the audio recording on YouTube? That is fake. So that's why I asked. So in those days, no video, no audio, right? So that means except for people who are there, he knows nobody else is listening right now or nobody else is even seeing right now. People in the country, it's probably 3 p.m. in the country right now, right? That was around the time when he delivered that speech. It was largely unseen work, but he did it. Most of leadership is unseen. When you're not expecting that someone is watching, when you're expecting that someone is watching, so you will teach someone, so you will help someone, so you will serve someone, chances are you're not going to last that long. It is the unseen work. It is sometimes even the work that people are ungrateful for. Leadership is a very thankless job sometimes. But if you actually entered leadership to get thank yous, thank you should exit up front. Have you ever seen the patriots and leaders in the Ramakrishna mission monks around this country? From places where there is not even a sarpanch, the Ramakrishna mission monk is the sarpanch. In places like Mayavati in Uttarakhand, where it snows and people are advised to walk in groups, till places in Kanyakumari, there are Ramakrishna mission monks who are committed to service, healthcare, education, seva, uh, spiritual quotient, uh, emotional quotient, intelligence quotient, everything is being increased all across the country. Continuously working. You don't know most of their names, you don't know most of their faces, right? It is the unseen work that is leadership. Of course, it gets recognized in due time. But when Kalam was doing all of his work, he could have possibly known, leave aside presidency, he might not even be recognized for the work that he is doing. But he continued to do it. So, leadership is leadership, bullying is bullying. Anybody who gets that wrong should just be told that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharad. Yes, Akanksha, you may ask your question now.
Can somebody reach her the mic real quick?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, my question would be, at present, Dexterity Global aims at providing educational services to the middle-age and the high school age students. So, sir, what are your future objectives, or what are the objectives of the foundation in the future? Is it going to excel at this, providing the educational services to the possibly all the children around the globe, or are they going to expand it to including other services as well?
That's a very good question. Growing up, I did have an idea that we also want to expand to West Africa and Latin America, the poorest of poor places in the world. But the more I dived into our work in India, I understand that doing it entirely in India itself is a challenging enough task. But if we have done that job, we would have done better for the world. So my focus is largely on India and everything that India is and everything that India can be. There are a lot of young entrepreneurs across the world now who, inspired by the dexterity model, are replicating it in different parts of the world. And we do not want them to call it dexterity or anything, because we don't work for the name of it. They are like taking these initiatives forward, and we actually advise a lot of them and guide a lot of them to run it in different places in Latin America and Africa. These are mostly young people who either went to college with me, or who now are juniors in college where I am an alum now, or young people all across the world who read about these stories and want to take these things forward. Our focus will continue to be middle school and high school students. However, Dexterity School of Leadership and Entrepreneurship, which is a summer residential program where we train our leaders who go on to be local role models in different states and different parts of the country, there we accept candidates between the age of 12 and 20. So a lot of undergraduate students also make it. Dexterity to College, which is a dexterity platform, because we believe at Dexterity till the age of 19, we can give you all those critical key skill sets and give you exposure, connect you to opportunities, but we would be fooling ourselves if we told you we can also make you a nuclear physicist. There we know if you want to become a leader in public policy, a leader in quantum mechanics, a leader in nuclear physics, then you need to go to the best institutions for that. So that is like mostly like our exit platform, Dexterity to College, but the exit never happens, like our alumni network that stays connected. But once our kids are 18, 19, then there is a D2C, Dexterity to College Undergraduate Fellowship, which is for high school students, and we prepare them for top 500 colleges across the world to go and pursue their education in their area of interest. And more likely it is not just engineering. It is things like economics, public policy, sociology, nuclear physics, whatever they want to study. So we have an undergraduate fellowship for high school students. And the good thing about top 500 colleges is not just that they have good education, they also have good scholarships. So even if our children are poorest of poor, they get good opportunities because they get a full scholarship. And we have a graduate fellowship, which is for kids who are already in an undergraduate institution when they go for their master's or PhD. So that we added 2 years back. We work with undergraduate students as well. There is a dexterity platform called Dexterity Seva, where kids who are in high school and those who are in college, after high school and college, they spend 1 year working with local communities, and more often than not in other states that they are unaware with. So undergraduate, middle school, high school and undergraduate, that's where we are. India will remain our focus group. You see, the challenge, like 21 states, 22 states, 10 years into the journey. Of course, we've been young, but Northeast, our efforts in the Northeast can be so much more. So you see, the challenges right here at home are big enough that if we solve these properly, we'll be doing greater service. One thing we might include is bringing in kids really young. So we do want to build something called Dexterity Light that brings kids in when they are like 6, 7 years old, and designs very light curriculum for them, so that they, right from a very early age, they get initiated into leadership and service and good quality education from a young age. But that is still in the works. We take a lot of time before we bring a platform public. We do a lot of work on the back end, we test it, and then we bring it. So thank you for your question. I hope I've answered it clearly.
So thank you so much. I am sure all the questions that you had in mind and all the inspiration you wanted to get, you have been quenched with all the thirst that you have. And the good things, all good things must come to an end. I wish things would continue, but he has to catch up somewhere else as well. And then some more things are to be completed. So
Perfect. I'll just quickly check if there is one last question I'll take. If there is one. Somebody who could not send in a question early. Yes, please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My name is Shabista Gohar, and right now I'm waiting for my bachelor results. And my question is like, what qualities do we need to have to become motivational speaker? And what's the path we can, for me, like right now after bachelor, what I should do to become a good motivational speaker?
Very good. Thank you for your question. See, that's the reason why I took a random one last question. It just increases the overall knowledge of the audience. Do not become a motivational speaker. If you ask that question thinking that I am a motivational speaker, no, I am not a motivational speaker. And this is for everybody here in the hall, okay? This is what has gone wrong with this generation. With YouTube in your hand, when you feel unhappy, you watch a motivational video to become happy. When you feel unmotivated, you watch a motivational video to get motivated. When you feel you're feeling lazy, you watch a motivational video to become more hardworking. How many of you have seen a remote control, a TV remote? What happens when the TV remote breaks or something? What do? Tape it? Somebody said tape it? Yes, a lot of people, unless you are very rich and you just throw it away and you buy a new one. When a TV remote breaks, and I know I have limited time, but I really want to share it with you before I leave. So, when a TV remote breaks, you usually tape it, right? And you continue using it. You are not a TV remote. That now I am feeling a little unhappy. So I'll take a what that is called is a band-aid solution. You just put a band-aid on it. You just put a tape on it. Now I'm feeling unhappy. I'll take a motivational video band-aid of being happy and I'll put it on. Now I'm feeling a little ungrateful. I'll put a gratefulness band-aid and put it on. Right? An entire industry has started in the country called motivational speaking, where somebody will come on the stage and that person will say, one day I was walking and then I saw a dog. And then this person will give you all adjectives about the dog, okay? Explaining to you the beauty or the ferocity of the dog, saying the dog had sharp teeth, ferocious eyes, like very furry, XYZ, whatever. I looked at the dog looked at me, and then the dog started chasing me. And then people like you sit down and listen this attentively, and then that person says, and then I started running and the dog started running and I started running and the dog started running. He says this 6 times in the same breath. And you sit down and listen in awe, not realizing that person practices it every evening. Right? Then that person says, and then I stopped. And then I saw the dog stopped. And then I looked at the dog and the dog looked at me. And then I smiled and the dog smiled at me. And that is the day I realized when you are faced with a problem, you smile. And next day you have a board examination and you're sitting down smiling. Nobody tells you that story comes from a face the brute story that Swami Vivekananda told long ago. But he didn't just tell the story. He gave you a pathway to walk. How you can build yourself inside out. If there is a child who is 4 feet tall and I give him a 2 feet wooden block, what is the child's height now? 4 feet tall child, I give him a 2 feet wooden block. What's his height now? 6? Absolutely wrong if you say 6. The child is still 4 feet tall. The momentary elevation is 6 feet. If there is a child who weighs 40 kgs and I put two 10 kg weights on his shoulder, what is his weight now? Weight is still 40 kg. Overall burden that he is on the planet now is with 60 kgs. So your motivational videos are momentary elevations. Momentarily you feel determined. Momentarily you feel inspired. And then you go back to the same thing. Is it? I'll do it tomorrow. Right? And most of these stories are actually copied from things that have been told back and now they come out without context. Like first, the context doesn't come with it. Second, the context is not explained. And young people like you get energized listening to somebody howling at the highest decibel possible. And then making the most amusing faces. So get out of that momentary elevation world. Where some problem happens, you put up a band-aid. You put up a tape. Where you need to increase your height, what will you do? Stand on a 2 feet wooden block or you will exercise? Want to increase your weight? Would you put two 10 kg weights on you or you will build your strength? So that exercise and build your strength comes from what Swami Vivekananda said, living at the source. Starting a conversation with self. The amount of conversation that we have today on social media and WhatsApp, what it has unfortunately done is the conversation with ourselves has stopped. Build a flow chart of questions where you ask yourself, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling so? What can I do about it? How can I change it? And there will be times when there will be no answers. Where will those answers come from? That makes what your parents told you true. Books are your best friends. Pick up a good Swami Vivekananda book. Pick up any good book that you like. Pick up a biography of Kalam or pick up a biography of anyone. And see if they fell into similar situations and get an answer from there. Continue to have that education in your mind. Education is an ongoing process. Schools and colleges are just institutions. They are not the structure of your education. You structure your education. So you build yourself bottom up. Okay? So motivational speaker should not be a profession. Why I am speaking here is because I've done something well in my life. As a high school student, represented India in 6 different countries, won over 200 competitions. As a college student, was the first Indian to deliver the graduation speech, did a lot of good things. As a founder of organization, have enabled students to receive millions of dollars in scholarships, changed a lot of lives. So I am here to talk to you about leadership and how to move forward and do things, right? Kalam was a motivational speaker, right? But Kalam was a scientist turned statesman who largely lived his life like a saint, whose life was inspiring, so he was on stage, right? So do not practice motivational speaking. Practice life. Become somebody, right? There can be a bureaucrat in your state who does not speak very well but has a very inspiring story to tell. That bureaucrat is a motivational speaker. There can be somebody who doesn't know anything but is standing up and telling you every day that raise both your hands and say, yes we can, yes we can, yes we can. And then goes away every day and thinks that I cannot. That person is not a motivational speaker. So motivational speaker should not be a career path, but yes, it can be an inside secret goal. That maybe one day I'll be so successful that I'll go and lecture other girl children, other young people in Northeast, other people across the country about what I have done and how they can do it. Okay? So do not make motivational speaking your career, which unfortunately a lot of people have. Do not make YouTube your friend, make yourself your friend, and read good books and start that inner conversation. Else, it is convenient to stand on a 2 feet block and call yourself 6 feet tall, but remember your height will remain 4 feet. Okay? On that note, thank you so much, everybody. This was wonderful. Thank you.
So that was wonderful. May we have just one more round of applause because nothing is sufficient. So we would call it a day. I think you were surprised when your classes, when you were told that your classes will be from 10 to 11:30, and now you have got, I mean, an atom bomb to walk with, and it's up to you when you can burst it in your life and, you know, and change the world, of course, but as he said, first change yourself. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Everybody can move ahead and be seated here. First, our guests will move, and then we can move behind.
Deepa Thapa, if you are here, please come near the stage. Deepa Thapa, SP